Session 35, we're going to be taking a look at distance, rate, and time. Most often this is thought of with cars going on a trip or traveling somewhere, that the distance that a car has to travel is related to the average speed or the rate at which the car is traveling multiplied by the time that it took to go that distance. So that's what we have here. The basic formula is that distance equals the rate at which you're traveling multiplied times your time. And then written as an algebraic equation, d equals r times t. Let's take a look at an example. Suppose somebody's driving on the highway and they're traveling a total distance of 350 miles. And their average speed over that trip is 50 miles an hour. The question is, how long does it take to get there? Well, some of you can figure that out in your head, but I like to be able to figure this out using algebra. So we know a couple things. First of all, I said that our distance is 350 miles. So we're going to come here and plug that into our formula. Our formula, once again, is d equals r times t. Distance equals rate times time. Well, our distance was 350 miles. We know that that's going to equal our rate times our time. Well, our rate, I said, was 50 miles an hour. 50 mph, 50 miles per hour. Then that's going to be multiplied by our time. Now, to solve this question or this problem for the variable t, doing so will tell us how long it took to travel that distance at that speed. So how do we get the t by itself? Well, first of all, the t is being multiplied by 50 miles per hour. So what do we need to do? To undo that multiplication, we need to divide both sides by 50 miles per hour. That's what the mph there stands for. Now, if we go ahead and figure this out, calculate it through, t times 50 divided by 50 is going to leave us what? It's just going to leave us t. The 50 miles per hour divided by the 50 miles per hour is going to leave us 1, the number 1. And 1 times t is just simply t. So we have t all by itself now on the right-hand side. Now on the left-hand side, we have 350 miles divided by 50 miles per hour. Well, what is 350 divided by 50? Well, it's 7. And without going into detail here about dividing miles by miles per hour, when you do that, however, what you're going to be left with as far as a unit is going to be hours. So the question is, how long did it take that driver to go 350 miles if his average speed or his average rate was 50 miles an hour? The answer is it took 7 hours. Okay, let's move on to the next example here. I have two different ones that we're going to look at. Let's do this top one first. In this particular one, we're told that the distance being traveled is 10 miles, and the rate of the vehicle that's doing the traveling, the average rate, is 40 miles an hour. The question then is, how long did it take? What amount of time did it take to travel 10 miles if the average speed or rate was 40 miles an hour? Once again, we're going to use distance equals rate times time. Well, what does our d equal? Our d equals 10. And that d is going to equal our rate, which is 40 miles per hour. And that's going to be multiplied times t for our time. Okay, how do we get t, this variable? How do we get it by itself? Well, it's only on one side of the equation right now. It's on the right side, so we'll just leave it there. But it's being multiplied by 40 miles an hour. So to undo that multiplication, we now have to divide by 40 miles an hour. And if we divide the right side by 40, we also have to come to the left side and also divide it by 40 as well. Let's take a look at our right side. What is 40 miles an hour times t divided by 40 miles an hour? Well, the 40 miles an hour divided by 40 miles an hour cancels out to a 1, because any number divided by itself is 1. 1 times t is just going to be t. So we're left with t all by itself on the right-hand side of the equation. Uh, this is miles here. On the left-hand side of the equation, we have 10 miles divided by 40 miles an hour. Well, what is 10 divided by 40? Well, 10 divided by 40 is 1/4. And when you take miles and divide it by miles per hour, you're going to get an hour as your unit for the answer. So the question is, t is equal to what? Well, t is equal to 1/4 of an hour. So this person traveled for 1/4 of an hour. Well, if I asked you to break that down into minutes, how many minutes are there in 1/4 of an hour? Well, you could take 60 minutes in an hour, divide it by 4, and you'll find out that in minutes, it would be 15 minutes, because 1/4 of an hour is 15 minutes. However, our rate up here, 40 miles per hour, was in hours, so our time also needs to be in an hour. So our answer would be 1/4 of an hour, or we could write that quarter as a decimal as 0.25. Either way is correct. So our time on the road to travel 10 miles at 40 miles an hour would be 0.25 hours, or 15 minutes. Down in our last example here, we're not told the distance, but what we're told is that the car is traveling at an average speed of 70 miles an hour, and that the length of time spent traveling at that speed is 3.5 hours. So what would the total distance be? Well, we don't know what d is, so we're going to leave that as is. Our rate, remember distance equals rate times time, our rate, r, is 70 miles per hour, and we're going to take that and multiply it by t. Remember, distance equals r times t, rate times time. Our rate is 70 miles an hour, and our time is 3.5 hours. So what we then do is take 70 times 3.5, and we find out that that equals 245 miles. Simple uses of the distance equals rate times time formula. Oftentimes you are given two of the values, and then you would use simple algebra to calculate the third. And then lastly, as a quick review, the basic formula for distance, rate, and time is distance equals rate times time, which is abbreviated or algebraized. That's not even a word, but I just made it up. Algebraized by sticking d for the variable equals r rate times t time. And then lastly, if your rate for a particular problem that you're solving is in miles per hour, then make sure that your time is also listed in hours. Don't choose a different time unit such as minutes or days, because when you multiply things out, it won't come out accurately because your rate is not in miles per day, it's in miles per hour. So our time also needs to be listed in that same unit of hours. That will finish up session 35 on distance, rate, and time.